you can have leadership give their vision, but at the end of the day, it's really the individuals who are going to benefit from those kind of investments that make the difference. So the opportunities to cultivate, I said, is about broadening the relationships that one has with the organization. And that might not just be the paid individuals who are there, putting out the vision, creating the path forward. It might be those that are there, especially in higher ed, for, a short 4 years and looking to share exactly what they're experiencing that really either tugs at the heartstrings or makes, a substantial qualitative difference to the donor.
Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Tell me a good cultivation story, something you learned along the way in terms of building a relationship with a potential donor.
Okay. So I think the building of the relationships piece, that's where specifically those partnerships on campus or with the organization, with the thought leaders, that's where it really comes into play in a big way. I always like to describe, these steps along the fundraising process, as a sandwich, because, the outside, the qualification, and, the solicitation, those are the thin pieces of bread. They take very little time. But what you want is that meat in the center. You want that, the good stuff that, makes up a great sandwich. And, I've found that leaning on the experts really can help that to move forward. So it's always been, the cultivation side has always been my opportunity to extend the relationship, not just with myself, but into the university or into the sphere of the people who are making it happen. Let's see, to think of a really positive story. I once worked with a donor who didn't know really where they wanted to make their impact, knew there was a lot going on at the university, knew that, just like a lot, where their background was may not match up with where their passions lie, but we're excited about education in general and the direction that the university was going. So what I did to kind of curate that was, and this was actually early on in the pandemic, so we weren't able to do a lot face to face. There wasn't the campus visit opportunity. It lacked a little bit of that substance that would be the quote unquote normal go-to for someone to experience what we were all about right then. So it became a series of virtual meetings with campus leaders from a couple different areas. One had to do with religious heritage, one had to do with the advancement of an honors area of study, and one had to do with their own background, which was in economics. So each time it was the connection of, let me introduce you to the leader. And then after about a half hour, 45 minutes of hearing about the vision and the direction we're going from the person putting that into place, I'll bring in, a student that can talk about their current experience, which is, it's normally interesting. It was incredibly interesting in those first couple, that first year of isolation and everyone scrambling to figure out how you educate, thousands and thousands of students without having their ability to gather in any kind of classroom setting. So it was a very candid and, eye-opening discussion about what had, both what the directions of those different areas were and what the current student experience was, as well as being grounded in, what the original expectation for those students were. So it was a good opportunity to give that individual a look at a couple different areas they might consider She ended up deciding that, the advancement of the honors college, the advancement of the toppest tier of students was really where she saw herself making an impact. And there was a lot of foresight for what was going to come that went into her decision because, you know, the dean was able to give the layout of, here's what we're doing now. We know and hope and keep our fingers crossed that this global pandemic is not going to be forever. So when we come out the tail end, here's what we're going to need in order to move forward. We're gonna have to put together opportunities for students to experience the world like we would have had them doing had this situation not come up. So she ended up, endowing a research travel fund that, timely was going to be put in place and allow the interest to grow over a few years so that there wouldn't even really need to be that immediate impact. It was, well, I see your vision. These students that I met virtually were excellent. I could really see students just like them benefiting from, going internationally to, some place they want to do research or to a conference where they could engage with other folks like them. So that got put in place, and was an excellent way to kind of cultivate and engage her in a less than stellar situation.
Was there a moment in that cultivation strategy where it really turned the corner for that donor?
Uh, I believe so, and I believe it was the caliber of the young woman who talked about her experience. It was a senior, so she had both sides of the equation in her experience to be able to share. Well, listen, I know before things went crazy, this is what I was doing. And now I'm not having that exact experience, but I'm, doing this and allowing that person to share their own goals for the future, especially in an uncertain time, definitely was the, for lack of a better term, trigger for her to decide to go in one direction versus the other, which I found interesting, and I always do, to consider. You can have leadership give their vision, but at the end of the day, it's really the individuals who are going to benefit from those kind of investments that make the difference. So the opportunities to cultivate, I said, is about broadening the relationships that one has with the organization. And that might not just be the paid individuals who are there, putting out the vision, creating the path forward. It might be those that are there, especially in higher ed, for a short 4 years and looking to share exactly what they're experiencing that really either tugs at the heartstrings or makes a substantial qualitative difference to the donor.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake that a lot of nonprofits make in all the different sectors. It's not just higher ed, but I think we tend to overemphasize the work of our staff or faculty, like the people running the programs that the nonprofits are. And we tend to underemphasize the actual beneficiaries that are whose lives are being transformed. Because I
Yeah.
think that's really who the donor cares most about. Uh, I, I think about a job search I was doing some time ago, and I was looking at some of these different nonprofits and looking at their websites, and it became very evident to me the ones that got stewardship, the ones that understood I'm going to cultivate my donors by connecting them with the individuals whose lives are transformed by their gift, rather than staff people telling stories about the work they're doing. Not
Yeah.
that the staff people stories weren't helpful and important for credibility's sake in some cases, but ultimately it's that student, it's that person that makes a difference. That's a great story, Max. Tell me about your best solicitation story.
So, perfect segue because it's going to go in the polar opposite direction of what we were just talking about because it was, the involvement of a leader. I love this story because it caught me completely by surprise. I had anticipated that this couple, these donors, were going to make a gift. was willing to put the dean in the position of being the one to ask for the gift, which he was willing to do and share his vision and the direction that the school was going. But I hadn't anticipated how well they would hit it off and what would become of the solicitation. So, we had a prep meeting. I explained, what I knew about the individuals, what I thought they were interested in, their background. They were a sweetheart couple who met at the school. They had a little bit of a non-traditional experience due to family issues. But, in general, it was about sharing his vision for where the school was going, asking for support for one of his primary objectives, which was more access and affordability for students, which was going to resonate with them because the experience while they were students hinged a lot on being able to stay in school because of the assistance financially of others. So we went down to their place and they had us for lunch. We sat around the, a little dining room table, chatted about the direction that the school was going, all those bullet points that I had laid out. But they really connected about tennis and about, the experience of having spent time, living in Canada. They just hit it off on a number of different areas that had nothing to do with anything that was going on. Even though, like I said, we checked all the boxes, all the things we wanted to talk about with them got done. But it was the interpersonal relationship that they felt trust build between themselves and this individual they had only just met, just organically. The charisma was there between them. They wanted to see him again, as soon as possible. It was one of those situations where everyone just got along really well. And so the dean did what I asked him to do. He asked them for $100,000. They immediately said, yes, we can do that. That's kind of what we were planning for. We thanked them. We finished lunch. He and I left, drove back to campus. Not an hour after we got back to campus, so approximately 2.5 hours later, my cell phone rang and it was the donor. And he was like, Max, that was excellent. Really great guy. I appreciate you introducing us. Let me ask you, we committed to the 100,000, but what would it take to, like I said earlier, what would the impact be to, or what would it take on our side financially to impact, maybe 3 or 4 students? And so I said, well, don't hold me to this, but just crunching numbers on my calculator, that would probably be around a $500,000 gift. Heard the phone get muffled. It was him speaking with his wife in the background. Came right back within a couple minutes and was like, yeah, we're in. He's great. His vision is great. I trust that he'll do the right thing when it comes to the students. So we're in. So it was one of those situations where, I don't know if I had asked originally for that amount of money, if they would have said yes, but their rapport that they built with this campus leader who they immediately trusted and knew he was going to go in the right direction was authentic. That made them up their gift 5-fold. And so that I love that story because, sometimes it's not the exact details that you're putting in front of someone. Sometimes it's that relationship building that you can't really plan for. It just, shared areas of interest, shared experiences, and being authentic with people really, it'll take you far.
Well, it sure will. And it really illustrates the power of having your executive, whether they're an executive director, a dean, or a president or CEO, really out in front of donors and participating. Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Fundraising can be hard work, and it can be hard to mentally get into the place you need to be in order to see new opportunities. Everyone struggles with it. We are like the fish in the fishbowl who just can't see the water they're swimming in. That's when having outside expertise comes in handy. For 25 years, I've been helping nonprofits analyze their challenges, discover new ways forward, and develop clear plans that lead to greater fundraising revenues. Now I am available to help your organization develop the abundant vision it needs to inspire new levels of philanthropy at your nonprofit as well. Check out abundantvision.net to start your journey toward greater fundraising success today. Now, back to the show. One of the best fundraising veterinary schools in the country, they got all the deans together with their development officers, and they were talking about his experience and how it all played out. And he really caused kind of a kerfuffle amongst the deans in the room with him when he shared that he gives 1 day a week to fundraising. Most executives of nonprofits can't imagine giving that much time.
Yeah.
But, there's a reason. There's a reason why this individual is so successful amongst his peers as a fundraiser. It's because he gives time to it. And really, the top donors, many of them are CEOs, right? They're business leaders. And CEOs like to talk to CEOs.
Yep.
They can talk to you and I, and we can probably close a gift, but there's no substitute for a leader talking with a leader. And as far as credibility of casting vision,
Yeah.
when it comes from the CEO, just nothing beats that. That's a great story, Max.
And I think when it comes to that leadership mentality of the value of fundraising as well, we talked about training a little bit. That individual who helped with that gift, he was big on that. The folks that he oversaw, the dean, the assistant deans, associate deans, even the faculty chairs should be in a position to be knowledgeable about the fundraising process. So he was a big proponent of the foundation members, the major gift officers, running trainings for the campus partners to share, this isn't this big scary thing that you think it is. And I'm not going to put you in a position to, to have to make the ask if you're not comfortable with that. Here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lean on you to have the depth of what is needed to share in the conversation about exactly what you're most comfortable with, whether it's your research, whether it's what your faculty are working on, whether it's, the impacts that you're having just in general. That's going to be your role, and I'm going to be here to support you on the way. And this dean was 1,000% in support of those kind of initiatives that allowed our campus partners to understand the role they played in the overall success of the fundraising machine.
That's wonderful. Well, we're going to wrap it up with this last question here. Tell me your best stewardship story.
All right. This one I bring up a lot. So it's like pre-programmed in my brain. And it's because I hear a similar thing from a lot of donors who commit to their gift, who say yes, which is the statement, I only wish it could be more. And I've heard that from donors who have given six-figure gifts. I've heard it from donors who have given, $20 gifts. And so the stewardship story that I go to whenever someone says that is about, like I said, assumptions are the worst, and that goes on both sides. So assuming that the gift that you just made is not enough or is in some way less than what would make a significant impact, is really hogwash. And here's a story where that was the case. This was when I was doing leadership annual giving. So the main solicitation I made for that were $1,000 scholarship gifts. Just a little dent in the overall annual cost for a student to go to this school, but significant enough that someone who said I only wish it could be more got to find out directly from the student exactly what it allowed to happen. And in that story, I had set up a lunch, the opportunity for someone who couldn't make it to the big fundraising scholarship dinner to meet one-on-one with myself and the student that they had helped fund in the previous year. And the student shared the story that I think he was going into his junior year, had just completed sophomore year, and in his sophomore year was looking into internship opportunities. And he shared that, in that sophomore year, he was working multiple jobs. His family didn't really have the means to pay for his college education. So everything he had, he really put towards, all right, can I make next year's tuition? How am I going to put that together? While also having to be concerned about building a resume for the career that followed. So he was working multiple jobs, busboy, those sorts of things, while also pursuing his area of interest was accounting. And so he had put through an internship application for some major accounting firm, got an interview, got a second interview, and I think was on to what would be a third interview, some extreme level of commitment to having to get screened, and did not end up getting the internship. And luckily, he was able to get feedback from the person who was doing the screenings to say, listen, it came down to you and one other student. And the leg up was not grades. It was that other student had some level of experience out there in the world doing this kind of work. His competition had worked for the family's, accounting person or something along those lines, had a little smidge that nudged him in the right direction. And so he was able to tell that donor, but now I'm going into my junior year, I just actually secured that same internship opportunity because that $1,000, as I looked at my own financial picture, I was able to determine I now only need two part-time jobs. I now only need two part-time jobs, and I took them at their word. And I started volunteering at a accounting firm in my hometown last summer, got a little bit of experience, and I didn't have the same level of competition, I don't think, but I got that internship, and now that's what I'm doing this upcoming summer. So thank you for that level of support that just nudged me over that finish line and allowed me to get that thing I was so dead set on pursuing and knew I had to do. So the donor, as we walked away, parted ways with the student and we're heading back to his car. What he said to me was that, you know, I said, well, that went pretty well. And he laughed and said, yeah, the only thing I wish is that my own children were there to kind of witness that level of decision making, because, they're in high school, they come with their hand out, they want to go to the mall or whatever. And I don't think they understand what it is to really struggle out here in this world. So, I'm glad I was able to make a difference for that student. And, I'm going to tell this story to my kids and let them know, exactly what it takes, what kind of tenacity you might need to succeed in this world, and the types of people like him that you're going to be up against. So it was that little push that, I only wish it could be more. You don't really know what your level of giving is going to allow to happen in someone else's life.
So, Max, tell me, did that donor go on to give more after that experience?
They did. The end result after my time, so he was on board at that level, in my opinion, for forever and ever. But in the future, he made it a point to give more towards that existing scholarship, to put it permanently in place so that even when he was gone, even if the liquid assets stopped flowing, that scholarship was going to be there in perpetuity.
So he endowed through his estate. Is that what you're saying?
He endowed with just a larger gift.
Gotcha. That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Goodness. Well, we're getting short on time, getting to the end of our time together here, but I've sure appreciated you taking time to talk with us, Max. Any other wisdom you want to leave us before we end?
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, I'll just go back to, hold your heads up high, fundraisers. We're doing excellent work in the world. And I always encourage people, keep working on your craft, because we want everyone to continue to do well at doing good.
Well, Max, that's a great word to end on. Thank you so much for your time today. Look forward to talking with you more in the future. Take
Thanks,
care.
Tom. Appreciate it.
Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.